We're all curious about various subjects and topics of interest. Tune in and practice curious curiosity. Hi, you're listening to Caring Curiosity. I'm your host Christopher, and my guest this week is a fellow Canadian with an interesting topic, Brian Charlebois. How you doing today, Brian?
Very good, thank you.
Great. Like how I get most of my guests for this podcast is through Reddit, which I've met some really interesting people and talked about some really interesting topics. And Brian proposed a really interesting topic that I haven't talked about yet, so it's great. And we get to learn something in the process. I even get to learn something myself. So, Brian proposed the idea of talking about how humans developed bipedalism, which is basically locomotion and just like using your hind two legs to move. I'm assuming. I tried
Yes.
paraphrasing. Yeah. Oh, Brian, how did humans develop bipedalism?
Well, first, I think I should introduce a different concept.
Yes.
So when I was young, the common theory for how we developed bipedalism was what they call the savanna theory.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where they said that we came down from the trees and we needed to use tools and we needed to hunt, and therefore we found it more efficient to be walking on two legs.
Uh-huh.
That theory has just been totally demolished. The Anthropology Society, they don't follow that anymore. It's been proven that during that period of our evolution, that it was not mostly a savanna that we were in, and it was mostly a wooded, forested, wet climate.
Mm-hmm.
So that theory has been kind of thrown out.
Yeah.
Nothing has replaced it. But there was another theory that was brought in that a long time ago, actually back in the 50s. There was a fellow that suggested that humans, as we know, humans, we developed from a common ancestor
Mm-hmm.
that was related to chimpanzees.
Yes.
So it was always assumed that we were living in the trees before we started moving on 2 feet on land.
Yeah.
So anyway, the aquatic, this other theory this guy came up with is called the Aquatic Ape Theory. Are you familiar with that at all?
I did some research before starting recording, so I'm kind of familiar with it from what I've read.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, in bare basic terms, the aquatic ape theory is from Wikipedia. This is the definition from Wikipedia. The idea that ancestors of modern humans were more aquatic than those of other great apes.
Yes.
Yes.
In the Aquatic Ape Theory, they think that we started adapting to living in the water. Mm-hmm. And there's several pretty strong evidence. There's some pretty strong evidence that shows that this is probably a likely scenario.
Yeah.
And although the most anthropologists, virtually all of them, dismiss the idea that we adapted to the water or that we were living in the water, they do have kind of adopted some partial parts of this, because some of the evidence is just so overwhelming that they cannot deny that we have adapted somewhat to water at least.
Yeah.
So in the original theory, this fellow, he studied ocean-going mammals. Huh. And in his studies, he noticed that all ocean-going mammals mm-hmm. have a layer of fat. Yeah. They lose a lot of their fur. Some of them lose it entirely. And they develop a layer of fat under their skin, between their skin and their flesh, mm-hmm. and to help insulate. And only ocean-going mammals seem to carry this, or at least mammals that frequent water. And so that is a pretty strong indication that we must have spent some time in the water, because we have a fat layer.
Yes.
And we have also lost most of our fur.
Yeah.
So this is what started him on this journey of considering that we might have adapted to water. There's some other really strong evidence. Another one is that our fingers and our toes wrinkle when we go in the water.
That's true.
And that doesn't happen to other mammals. That only happens to one of the only other mammals that's shown to happen to are otters. Huh. And this has been, and fairly recently, it has been narrowed down to, they believe it's an adaptation to help grip wet surfaces.
That does make sense.
Yeah, it increases the surface area that we're touching because of the wrinkling, and it also softens the tissue so that it's actually grabs better.
Yeah, it's like when if you ever take a bath, just soak in a bathtub, and I've done this before. Yeah. I pull my hands out; they're all pruny, it's all soft.
Yes, the interesting thing is that only happens to your fingers and your toes, but doesn't happen to the rest of your body.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually.
Yeah, and it does not happen to monkeys or any other mammals that are not involved in the water.
But it happens to otters.
Yes, because they're in the water. Yeah,
they are in the water.
And they need the grip. Yeah. And an interesting thing I actually noticed on Reddit about a year ago, some people don't have that adaptation. There are people that their fingers do not shrivel.
Ooh.
There was a guy under what was the sub? Under mildly interesting. Somebody had posted pictures of their hands that after being in the water that they didn't shrivel. And so, so there's obviously a gene for this that can come and go, but generally most of us have this. So another big indicator that we spent a lot of time in the water is our human babies float. If you've ever seen a Nirvana album, I think it was their first album, where they have the baby. They have the baby swimming in the water.
Oh, no, I'll be honest. I don't listen to a lot of Nirvana. I mean, every once in a while, maybe, just hear a little snippet. I don't listen to a lot of Nirvana. Human babies float in water. Ooh, that's interesting.
Not only do they float, they can turn themselves upright in the water, and they automatically hold their breath when their face is in the water.
Huh.
So they can swim to a slight degree. And just enough to control their position in the water, and they automatically turn over to be face up, and they automatically know not to breathe when they're underwater.
Yeah, that's actually that's interesting.
Yes, and
I didn't know that.
So human babies, I'm sure you know this, they're very chubby. And they have this quite a layer of fat, more than most of us. At birth, they're born with this layer of fat.
Yep.
And as opposed to our closest relative, the chimpanzee or bonobos, they are skinny. There is zero fat content when they are born. Huh. So a monkey or a primate, if you were to throw them in the water, they would sink to the bottom. And with zero chance of being able to survive.
Oh,
but a human baby right from birth will automatically face up on the surface and breathe and be relaxed and not even be at all stressed about this.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so that's a pretty strong indicator.
It is. You had also mentioned in your message to me on Reddit that you have your own theory and adaptation about this.
Yeah, so in the original Aquatic Ape Theory, they felt that we started standing upright because we were wading in the water. And in their theory, they kind of push it to the point that we spent all of our time in the water. And I don't think that quite occurred. I think we probably tried to stay out of the water as much as we can. So here's my take on this whole thing. I believe that, well, first of all, I'd like to point out something, and somebody else pointed this out to me many years ago, when arguing, this person was not a big supporter of the Aquatic Ape Theory, but he criticized the people in the Anthropology for not accepting the fact that humans have always been on the water's edge. Every settlement throughout history, if we look at where we are right now, all our major cities and everything else are all placed on the edge of the water. We're always on the edge of a lake, on the edge of a river, on the, or what have you. Always very, very near fresh water, right on the edge. And so if we go back in history, every settlement has always been on the edge of the water. You don't find settlements out in the middle of the savannah unless there's an access to water.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, so if we go back in time, we've always been a water's edge animal. And so this really debunks the savannah theory, because the Occam's razor way of looking at things. If we know that we came from an animal that likely lived in the trees, and then we became an animal that lives along the water's edge. It makes no sense that there would be a divergence from that where we lived on a savanna instead. Why would we go from trees to savannas to water's edge?
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
The most common sense thing is to say that we went from the trees to the water's edge.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Speaking wise, that's interesting because I do take anthropology as a course in college, but it's only like introduction to anthropology, and I never knew about this, but I don't think we've ever been taught that. Like we've been taught because how my anthropology course works is that we follow a book from an anthropologist, Michael Wetch. I don't know how to pronounce his last name because it's kind of confusing, but we follow along with his book, which is not really a textbook, but it's designed to be a textbook. There are challenges in the book after every lesson for us to attempt. So from talking to a stranger to word weaving and like making something sound strange, like from like a different culture standpoint. It is interesting how anthropology works, and I actually do like this. I actually do like this course. I took it because like it sounds interesting. I could probably learn a thing or two. It is very interesting. Anthropology is amazing.
Oh, it is, absolutely. This is it's something I've been thinking about forever, and it's one thing that always has piqued my interest. I heard about the water baby theory or the aquatic ape theory long ago. I'm 57 now, and I think I was probably around 18, 19 at the time when I first heard that theory. And I found it very intriguing. I was, not willing to go a whole hog on it and claim it as being the right theory, but I found it extremely interesting. And so anyway, over the years, as when I got married, had kids, about 15 years ago, I decided to do 20 years ago, I decided to do more research as I was telling my kids about the whole aquatic ape theory. And so I thought I'd better see where the science is at now. And so I did a bunch more research. And that's where I really started thinking about this, and then started kind of adding some of my own thoughts into there. So the way I see this is if we adapted into the water, which I think we did, there would have been a process there. So I'll try to describe what I think the process was. Yeah. I think, first of all, I think it's very interesting to note that our closest ancestors are chimpanzees and bonobos. Bonobos and chimpanzees don't mix. They live in separate territories. Yeah. Their separate territories are divided by the Congo River. So bonobos are one side of the Congo River and chimpanzees are on the other, and they don't mix. That dividing line of the river is a habitat on its own. So we have a common ancestor that obviously was grown, that was developed or occupied that area, and then it developed into the three different categories that we know: the bonobos, the chimps, and us. The only other environment there to develop into is the water itself, the river. So now, most animals will adapt to, especially when they're prosperous and doing well and then, competing for food, they adapt to whatever environment they can that's around them. Waterfront or the beach or the water's edge is an environment all on its own. Birds develop to live on land, to live in the water, and live along the water's edge. Certain birds develop just to live along the water's edge.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with crustaceans. There are certain crustaceans that live in the ocean. There are certain crustaceans that have developed to become insects and they live on land.
Yep.
And there are certain crustaceans that only live in the tidal zone.
Huh.
So it's an environment all on its own. So it would make sense that if our early ancestors were adapting to all the different environments around, that would be one of them. Yeah. The water's edge. Now, why don't we see chimpanzees today going to the water's edge? We don't have any type of monkey or chimpanzee, except for, I can tell you about some that have been, people have kind of encouraged them to live along the water's edge. But and naturally, there were no monkeys that lived along the water's edge that we know of. And in my theory, that's because we were the ones that did it. We took that territory, so there was no room for them.
Ooh, that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
So no other monkey could move into that territory because we were the monkey in that territory.
That is an interesting theory. I'll admit that. It does have some sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I see it is that things like crocodile eggs and turtle eggs would have been a yearly a bounty of food that would come seasonally along the water's edge. And that monkeys probably adapted to seasonally go down there and harvest these eggs. And there would have been very easy pickings for monkeys or chimpanzees or whatever, or us. And so that would have brought us to the water's edge. And now when you're down along a beach, usually you're not very close to the trees. So you're now when you're dealing with large land predators, you don't have, it's a long way to make it to safety in the trees. So if you're down there raiding turtle eggs, turtle nests, and all of a sudden the predators come, actually I'm getting let me go off track here a little bit on crocodiles. So one of the big reasons that people or anthropologists claim that we probably could not have adapted to living in the water is the prevalence of crocodiles in the water. I've spoken, there was a crocodile expert that was on Reddit about 5 years ago, maybe a little even more. Anyway, I copied this. I asked him a question. I asked him, what would happen if a person or a group of people tried to enter crocodile-infested waters? Could they? Right?
Yeah.
And his answer was, one person can easily enter crocodile-infested waters, and the crocodiles will always leave. Always. They will run away. There are zero things to fear from going into water where there are crocodiles. Crocodiles only attack humans when they can get the jump on them. When they think they have the advantage that they can get a good latch onto them and they don't see them coming. Crocodiles are surface hunters. They can't see under the water. They come up and look from the surface to look for their prey. And so therefore they can't really sneak up on you underwater. You can see them coming. So therefore, as long as you can see the crocodile and the crocodile knows that you can see it, it will avoid you. It won't come near you.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So
you'll have the advantage of seeing them before they can have the advantage of jumping up on you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's one person, let alone a group of people. Another thing about crocodiles is if researchers, when they go to examine a crocodile nest and they tear into the nest to dig up the eggs, the mother watches the nest. She will defend the nest, right? But what happens if you ever watch these nature shows, when you go when they dig into the nest, they're watching for the mother, and the mother will rush them, right? Yeah. And the mother will rush them, trying to scare them away from the nest. All they have to do is stand there defiantly, and the mother will back down, go back into the water, and leave them alone. It's only a bluff. They will not attack.
It's like they're trying to make you think like I'm going to attack, and it's like be scared of me. It's like if you know that they aren't, it's you have that advantage.
You have that advantage. So researchers have known this for a long time. They're not scared to approach a nest. They keep an eye out for the mother. When she does rush, they're expecting it. They'll back off far enough, but they don't run away. And then, they just go back to the nest as soon as she backs off, and she might try it again, but then pretty soon she won't try it anymore when she realizes that's not doing any good. So it's all bluff. Early humans, when we were raiding the nest, they can imagine there's probably a big group of us. We're all tearing into a crocodile nest, and then the mother would rush out. And if we were hungry enough, we wouldn't run away. We would just back up a little bit, and then as soon as she backed up, we'd go back into the nest and start eating away. And so pretty soon, they would realize that they have nothing to fear from the crocodile. So this would embolden them to realize that they don't have anything to fear. So the point I'm getting to is there is nothing for us to fear by going into the water.
Yeah.
And if we get past the point of or learn that we don't have to fear these crocodiles, then we become we're not so scared to go into the water.
You have more confidence
more confidence.
You're
Yes.
not that scared. We have that knowledge now.
Yes.
And upper advantage to go in, and we know that they aren't going to attack us. It's a bluff.
So now when we're along the edge of the water and a bunch of lions come and they corner us against the water, instead of trying to run past them to the trees,
just go.
We know our safest bet is to go into the water.
Yeah.
So that becomes our safe haven. And that's why we adapt to the water, is to avoid land predators.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So I think that we spent a lot of time in the water, but not because we wanted to, but because we had to. Yes. So that we can exploit the different food sources along the water's edge, and still always have a safe place to go when predators come.
Yeah.
So that becomes our safe haven. Now, the mechanism that leads to bipedalism is the act of running into water. Now, if you can imagine yourself for a minute, imagine you've been on the beach, you've run right into the water, run in and dive, right? If you were to do that with the largest dog you've ever seen, and you were both to run into the water as fast as you can, I'll guarantee that you can get deeper and faster than the dog.
Oh.
He may reach the water first, but he's on 4 legs. As soon as he starts running in and he's 2 feet in the water is almost to his chest, and he can't lift his legs over it anymore. So he's trying to bound, right? He's trying to bound his way into the water. Whereas as we run, and he might get 1 bound. After he gets up to his chest, he's going to bounce once, and then he's not really going to be able to do it again.
Yeah.
We can, as we run into the water, as soon as the water gets up to our knees, we start lifting our legs higher, and we're swinging our legs wide and high to pull it out of the water and get it as far ahead as we can.
Yeah.
So as our legs become longer, we can make more steps before we do the final dive. And the final dive is also critical too. This gets you way out there very quickly. So as compared to any other animal, like a lion, they cannot get into, let's say, about 6 feet depth of water. They can't get into 5 or 6 feet of water as fast as a human. Yeah. I would argue a human is the fastest land animal that can make it from land into water the quickest.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that.
And it's only because we are bipedal.
Yes.
And if we were on all 4s, there's no way we could do that. So a chimpanzee running into the water, the first thing, it's going to be running on all 4s till it hits the water, and then it's going to get up on 2 legs, and it's going to try to swing its legs as much as it can through the water until it gets as far as it can, and then it dives.
Yeah.
Well, as our legs grow and they become longer, we're able to make it faster.
Yeah.
So this becomes a direct mechanism for evolution. Yeah. The ones with the shorter legs get eaten first. The ones that develop longer legs always survive.
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest, and the fittest in this situation are the people with longer legs.
Yeah.
So that is my mechanism for bipedalism, a direct mechanism. In past theories, they never had this. They were always looking for the direct mechanism that leads to bipedalism. And they've never been able to find it. They kind of gave up. Joe Rogan had an anthropologist on the other day I was listening to. And he said the closest they have right now, because Joe was asking him, how did we get bipedalism? And he talked about the savanna theory, how it doesn't make sense anymore. And then he talked about how his colleague believes it has to do with, he's tied it into monogamy and sex and monogamy. And he thinks that we developed bipedalism so we could bear children easier and we could help our mates better and stuff like this. There's no direct mechanism there, though.
No.
And it's a very obscure, the guy even trying to explain it, he said, I can't really explain it. It's my colleague's idea. And so it's so obscure that he can't even explain it to his colleague well enough that he can explain it to somebody else. So that's where they're at right now in anthropology, as far as bipedalism goes. So I think I have a much more reasonable method of bipedalism that seems to make sense.
It does make more sense than the other guys.
Yes.
Like, we developed bipedalism to survive and to protect ourselves from land mammals. Just like you said, with the tigers or lions. I don't remember because my memory's kind of crap, but it's our way of surviving.
That's right.
To bear children and to have intercourse. I can't really see a way of how that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no direct mechanism there that has to lead to bipedalism.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense, really.
Well, I didn't hear it directly from him, and like I said, his colleague couldn't explain it very well. Maybe if I actually heard it from the fellow, I'd get a better explanation. But
probably.
It didn't sound very good. Yeah. So I've also added on, I've kind of built on this scenario a little bit, but this part of this mechanism of bipedalism is by far the strongest thing that I feel that I have correct. But I've also added on to this a little bit further. I think we became hairless because not only because hair is not a good insulator in the water, but also because it carries all that water when you leave the water. Now we're going in and out all the time. Yeah, we don't want to carry all that extra water weight or the coldness of it or anything else. We want to have a body that dissipates that water as fast as possible. Yeah. So that's one reason for hairlessness. Another one, though, I think is I think during this period of our evolution, we were probably spending most nights in the water because we had to. The land predators would keep us in a position where we didn't feel safe on the beach. They could run up and get us at any time. So we felt safer in the water. And so in my thought process, I think that we probably stayed in about 4 feet of water in a crouched position and tried our best to sleep. It was not comfortable, but it probably was.
I mean, imagine trying to sleep like in a crouched position in like 4 feet deep waters. Just imagine sleeping like that. It wouldn't be comfortable.
No, it wouldn't be, but you could probably catch a few Z's. Anyway, I think what we did, when you're in water and you're inactive, you're always cold, no matter what the temperature of the water. Yep. Because the water is never 97 degrees or whatever, right? Whatever. So I think that this we would have bunched together as a massive group. And I think we would have squeezed ourselves in tight for body warmth. And so we're basically spooning. Everybody be spooning one another. And in this position, the areas that you're getting contact now will help keep you warm. And hair gets in the way of that. So we're best to lose all our hair. And if you look at the hair patterns on our bodies, the spooning position is exactly where we've lost most of the hair. Everywhere that we would contact. So I think that was a direct result of trying to conserve heat when we were trying to sleep. Development of breasts, female breasts float. They're natural flotation devices. This in the original water baby theory, they had a few ideas of why this would happen, but I see it as an extra method to help contain your infant. So when you have a child and everybody's spooning together, the mother, between her and whoever she's up against, she would be holding her child on her chest, and it'd be best if the child was held up high above the water level.
Yeah.
And so it's not really that natural for her to hold the child at that height. But if the child was floating in front of the female and her boobs are right there under the child, it'll help support the child and keep it up in the proper position.
Yeah.
And then plus feeding time is right there. So it doesn't have to go too far for food.
It's convenient.
Yes. But to me, I can see where this would be the natural position where you would hold the baby. It would be right there up on top of your breasts, while floating. And then the other person's in front of you, blocking them from, kind of corralling the child in. Eh? Another thing I want to point out now is we are the top predator today.
Yeah.
We have to climb a ladder. We had to climb a ladder. We did not take on lions. We're not the first predator we had to overcome. We had to overcome smaller predators first, and then work our way up to things like lions and bears and what have you, right? To me, the most obvious first major predator that we could overcome was the crocodile. As I said, they already have a fear of humans, which I think developed over time, actually. I don't know if they had that much fear originally, but I think we've instilled that fear in them over the years. But the one predator that you can kill by stoning is the crocodile. You can't kill a lion by throwing stones at it.
That'll probably take forever.
You'd have to corner them well enough that they cannot move, right? But you can corner a crocodile quite easily. You can get if you could get between them and their water source, you can wear them out and you can corner them and you could stone them to death.
It's also like a cruel way to go out, though, like being stoned to death. It is painful, but it's cruel.
But us as early humans, though, the only option they had was stoning.
Yeah.
Sticks and stones were their only options.
Yeah.
So the one major predator that a monkey even today could feasibly kill is an alligator. So that helps embolden us when we were able to take on a good sized predator like that, and we could and felt that we were dominant over it. That would have been a huge thing as far as making us feel more dominant ourselves. So then it's relatively, you can see where we'd start working our way up the chain. Now, as we develop better tools, then we can start taking on other predators on land. We probably eventually got bolder and bolder with the smaller predators like hyenas and wild dogs and things like this. But it probably took us a long time before we were comfortable with taking on a lion or something like that. So I think that we stayed in the water up until we reached the point that we could take on lions. What made that difference is either tool development or the discovery of fire. I think there's a really good chance that we've had fire for over 3 million years. And that fire was the one thing that gave us the confidence to not have to sleep in the water every night anymore.
That's interesting, honestly. Like, that's why I love, because my podcast originally was to inform people. It's like try to help cure people's curiosity, even though like there is no cure to curiosity. No.
But that's kind of that's the beauty of it, though.
Yeah, you get to learn something new in the process and talk to some really interesting people. That's what I absolutely love about this podcast. And I don't know if I can boldly say that I'm teaching people something here. This is all speculation. Yeah.
But I do feel that there is personally anyway, I feel very convinced that at least the mechanism for bipedalism here makes a lot of sense, and it should be looked into a lot deeper. I cannot get an anthropologist to look into this thing with any validity at all, though. They pretty much laugh at me. There are people, I wish I could get a hold of. David Attenborough is a big believer of the aquatic ape theory. I wish I could get a hold of him because I think there's a good chance he would actually like my idea.
Probably, yeah.
There are some people out there that are still pretty good proponents of the aquatic ape theory. So, but not registered anthropologists.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not an anthropologist, and the anthropologists kind of laugh at David Attenborough for his stance on aquatic apes. In fact, I heard he was going to do a new film on aquatic apes.
Oh.
But that was a year ago, and they said there was going to come out with it within a year, and I have not heard anything. So I'm not holding my breath.
Oh. Yeah, so that's all the time we have for this week. I hope you guys learned something in the process, learned something new today, or whenever this is going to be uploaded.
At least learn to look at things in new light and look at all the different possibilities that are out there. Like you said, you didn't even hear the aquatic ape theory before. No, it should be, even though there's no proof of it, it should be better well known. Yeah. Just so that people can kind of, play with the idea.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening and tuning in this week. And thank you to Brian for joining me and proposing this interesting topic. And holy crap, I love it. I've never had this much fun on an episode before, I'll be honest.
Well, I have many other things to talk about. You'll have to have me on again sometime. Yeah. I have some other pretty interesting topics too.
Yeah, but, we'll probably get you back for season 2. So
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for the opportunity, though. I don't get many opportunities to express these views, and I just relish when I do.
No problem. Anyways, that's all we have for this week. Tune in next week, and perhaps we'll cure your curiosity. Bye, guys.
Bye.